I am live, and I look particularly white today. I don't know if it's the lighting or what. Yeah, that's weird. Hold on, actually, this is bothering me. Wow, what a rough start to today's video, and it's funny because it's fitting for what we're going to talk about today, which has been a rough start to Chris Davis's 7-year, $161 million contract that he signed in January of 2016. So, since January of 2016, Chris Davis has played 157. That's a full season. He played one full season at age 30 in 2016 upon signing the contract. And since hasn't played in more than 128 games and hasn't hit more. I mean, he hit 26 home runs in 2017, but 16, 12, none in 2020. He led the majors in strikeouts. That's, he led the major leagues in home runs and RBIs in 2013, led in home runs in 2015, but he also led in strikeouts. But hey, the guy's led the league in home runs more than once. He's led in RBIs. He's a great power hitter, and I guess at age 30, it was time to start, building around him. You could get an older Chris Davis than you could get an older Chris Davis for cheaper than you could, a younger Manny Machado. We saw that Manny Machado signed for the biggest contract in sports, I believe, when he signed for $300+ million. Baltimore thought they could build around Chris Davis as he aged into his mid-30s, and that, although not a defensive guy, he could at least DH and still give them a lot of power. Chris Davis is a guy who was a late bloomer. He did have success early on in Texas, and I remember too. I used to buy the 2K baseball games back when Xbox. I haven't had a PlayStation since PS2, so I've had a 360. I've had a Nintendo Switch. Now I play an Xbox One. Basically the last time I got to annually play baseball games was the 2K baseball games back on the 360. And I remember, who is this Chris Davis guy? Had 21 homers. He was definitely made a name for himself those first year or two in Texas, but he really fell off. And that's what causes him to get traded to Baltimore. And for Baltimore, he just completely turned it around and became a superstar. And you reward your superstars, obviously. It's really tough too when you talk about these contracts. It's like, I want to, often if it's anyone's fault, it's going to be the organization's fault. I mean, they're in a position to make these decisions with all the proper knowledge and whatever they need to make that decision. They have at their disposal. They should have the foresight, especially when they signed him in 2016, the Albert Pujols nightmare is already well underway. And I'm not sure about Miguel Cabrera, but Miguel Cabrera, that might have been. Well, let's look. Let's look where Miguel Cabrera starts his descent. Which, by the way, Miguel Cabrera hit a 2-run home run yesterday on opening day, which proved to be the difference in the Cleveland baseball team season opener. So Miguel Cabrera is already making me eat my words, but we'll see about that. It's a long season, but certainly to see Miguel Cabrera hit a home run in the snow was pretty cool. I can't even lie. Albert Pujols is the one that I feel like I'm gonna be the one that, whether it's his compiling or whatever he was doing in St. Louis, like, I think I'm gonna be the one to oppose Albert Pujols, but Miguel Cabrera, he was on the Marlins. I love Miguel Cabrera. The guy won the Triple Crown as a hitter. In 2016 was Miguel Cabrera's last good year. Okay, so they didn't quite have it. They didn't quite understand that Miguel Cabrera was starting to slide too, but you definitely had Albert Pujols' nightmare already well underway, because it's basically a nightmare from day one with Albert Pujols. Excuse me. Just it seems crazy. Like a 7-year, $161 million deal that would have made sense to me in 2013. Like he hits 33 home runs, batting .270 with 85 RBIs. It makes sense because if you give him a 7-year deal, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what? You give him a 7-year deal in 2012. He's done. He doesn't even come out for 2020. He's done by 2019. And that would have been a perfect stopping point for him. Yeah, you're hanging it up a little early at 33, but when your production goes down so steadily and really so rapidly, I mean, from 47 to 38 to 26 to 16 to 12 to no home runs in 2020. He only played in 16 games, but he had 52 ABs and had no home runs. I mean, oh my gosh. If you're getting 53 home runs and 584 at bats, you're hitting 53 home runs. I think you can at least muster one or two and 52 ABs, but no, it's not even just his power. It's the contact hitting that's obviously the most damning when you look at his numbers. In 2015, he hit 262, and that's when he signs the contract for the following season. So now under contract for 7 years, his batting average dipped 40 points. Then it dips only 6 points. Then it dips only 7 points. But then, it goes back up in 2019. It goes from 168 to 179 in 2019. And then in 2020, in those 52 ABs, he mustered only a 115 batting average. So it's really quite remarkable when you see a guy that signed for that much money and just such a drop off in his numbers. It's not even Albert Pujols can stake a claim to something this extravagant. It's really something to behold. And the reason I made this video isn't to pile on Chris Davis. It's that I was with my friend last night talking on Xbox, and Jacob, and he made a mention that Chris Davis is certainly retired. And I got to look him up because I just had to see his numbers, how he finished out. I knew it was bad. I knew he was more or less a pariah in Baltimore, but either way, I wanted to see how he ended up. And turns out, although he's hurt, he is still active. He's got 2 more years left on his deal, both for this year and for next season. He's going to be on the books for 2022 for the Baltimore Orioles as well. And you know what? It's only his age 35 season. So really, he's at an age where he can definitely, absolutely turn it around, but that just doesn't seem to be the case with these aging first basemen when they enter their twilight. It just the decline is certainly steep, and Chris Davis is the number 1 cash earner on the Baltimore Orioles. No one makes more money in salary than Chris Davis. And to me, that's just absolutely fascinating. When you look at, like I said, they couldn't have afforded Manny Machado, but to know that that's the pillar financially for their product on the field is Chris Davis. He's been posted to the 60-day DL with a lower back strain, and a timetable for his recovery has yet to be established. So this guy is making 17. Now the base salary, $17 million, compared to some of these other guys, is really not that much. It almost seems like they got him for good value at the time. But for a guy that didn't play much defense and struck out a lot, and then for him to fall off the way he did, maybe $17 million a year every year was just a bad contract to begin with. It certainly seems like a bad contract now with the revisionist history. We can go back and see how far he's fallen off, but maybe for Baltimore, you got to sell tickets. I think that's my big thing with the Cleveland baseball team. They do still have Jose Ramirez. They do still have Franmil Reyes, but you those guys are great, but Jose Ramirez didn't quite sell tickets the way Francisco Lindor did. Everyone talks about Francisco Lindor's smile, and just really there was a certain set of charisma with Francisco Lindor that you just don't get with certain players. And he sold tickets. He brought people to the ballpark, not only with his exceptional play, but his personality. People wanted to come see him play. And I don't know that Chris Davis was ever that guy, but if you don't have the personality, home runs are one of the best ways to draw people to the ballpark. What was that old saying that the Atlanta Braves pitching staff had? Chicks dig the long ball, right? So certainly you would think that Chris Davis had some marketability, and he hit more home runs than Manny Machado. Not that when you compare the players, that almost means nothing, but there was a certain marketability that I think the Baltimore Orioles thought that for $17 million a year, even if his contact hitting continues to fall off, he'll still produce the power numbers. He'll still hit the home runs that'll may or may not help the team, but he'll still be able to sell tickets and help the team or the organization maybe that way. And when he's not on the field, only having 52 at bats last season, playing in 16 games in a shortened season, but still only playing a fraction of the games in a shortened season, not being out there this year. I mean, that's how people end up thinking that a guy's retired. Not only does your numbers fall off that badly, but then to not be out on the field, I think that's what's happened with Robinson Cano, for example. I don't think people realize he's on the Mets. I certainly didn't. And when you get suspended or you miss that much time, and that's just the way it goes. There's so many fresh young faces. Baseball is really hitting. I think it happened to the NBA a few years ago, and we're getting past it now. But the MLB is really in a position where all their stars are young players. You still have Mike Trout. I mean, I think the ship has sailed on Bryce Harper, but there's a whole new cast of like young stars. And just as a product in general, it'll definitely help the Major League Baseball in the long run, no doubt. But I think we're about to experience and if it hasn't already started, because you got guys like Robinson Cano and Chris Davis just disappear, and those were two stars in their day. So there's sort of a barrier to entry. Like last night, I was watching the Oakland Athletics and Houston Astros game, and Houston Astros opening day starter is Zach Greinke. He's a superstar. The Oakland Athletics starting pitcher was actually a kid from Genoa, Ohio, that my friend Jacob was giving me like a really big breakdown on. And yeah, so there's just so many guys like that. You have an opening day starter from around here, from where I'm from, and I just hadn't heard of him. And I think that's something that there's a lot of young stars that are, and this kid's good, by the way. There's a lot of young stars that are coming up, and it really feels like Chris Davis's days are behind him in terms of being a star, in terms of being anything. So, I want to see the bright side for him. The fact that the Baltimore Orioles trusted him to be a guy that they could build around, but it clearly hasn't worked. Baltimore has been in a full rebuild, and so it's almost like, this team is headed in a completely new direction with totally young guys, and yet they still feel forced to trot out Chris Davis for at-bats if and when he's healthy, because the guy makes $17 million. He's now become Travis Hafner. Travis Hafner was an untradeable contract for the Cleveland baseball team for several years. And even when he would bat 215, like, what are you going to do? The guy almost led the league in home runs the one year. So the Cleveland baseball team signs him to a huge deal, and he has a couple more productive years, but by the end, I mean, it's just untradeable. They might have got rid of him in the very end to the Yankees, because I know that Travis Hafner ended up on the Yankees. I'm not sure if it was by trade or what, but if it was indeed a trade, I guarantee the Cleveland baseball team got absolutely nothing for him, because the heart of that deal was freeing Cleveland from having to pay the Travis Hafner contract. And that might be what happens with Chris Davis. If Chris Davis can get healthy, get on the field, and show that he has anything left in the tank, then maybe, just maybe, the Orioles can get out from under him, get him to a contender that needs a power bat off the bench or something, and they can finally move on from this just nightmare contract that they signed. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. He put up numbers that first year in 2016, not the numbers he had been putting up, but numbers, and has just fallen off a cliff every year since. It's really one of, with Albert Pujols, it's probably more shocking just because it's just a sustained level of mediocrity you wouldn't expect from such an amazing player like that. But for being all-star, and Chris Davis finished top 3 in the MVP one year, to be a guy who was almost an MVP to now, I mean, it's the worst contract out there. He's one of the worst players in baseball. He makes $17 million as a guy that cannot hit, and he obviously can't field, but he cannot hit. So it's crazy. The guy batted 115 in 52 or whatever, 50 plus ABs last year. He batted 115 in 16 games. And let's give him even his full season. When he had 524 plate appearances, he bat 215. The next season, with 470 ABs in 2018, he batted 168. So he jumped up that jump up in average I was talking about earlier. It only occurred because he had 163 less at bats the following year in 2019. I'm sure his batting average would have continued to dip like it did the following year in 2020 when he went down to 115 in limited action. But just look at that 2018, 16 homers. He struck out 192 times, batted 168 with a sub 250 on base percentage, and he slugged less than 300. Absolutely devastating. And I often admired the Baltimore Orioles for a number of reasons, and we'll see how they recover from this, because it's certainly looking dark for the Baltimore Orioles in terms of the Manny Machado thing and now Chris Davis. But like I said, they're on the rebuild, and like most teams that make stupid decisions and cost themselves. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking from the point of a bitter Cleveland baseball team. Cleveland was 31-5 against the Tigers in their previous 36 matchups, and then yesterday they lose, which it's one game, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a long season, and Cleveland has only themselves to blame. It's not like they got cheated or got screwed or suspended, and just being a bad organization. Baltimore Orioles. Just one last thing here. Baltimore Orioles. Who cares? Well, that's the thing. Okay, you know what? We won't. Well, this is how we'll end the video, because I was talking a lot about how Chris Davis can draw fans. And the attendance for Camden Yards was insane, especially not even just when it opened, but even into the early 2000s. They had awesome attendance, and that had a lot to do with just the park itself. But as the attendance sort of started to wane there, it comes back 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Those are the years that they really put it together. And one of the big reasons why was Chris Davis. But then that 2016, 10th. And then when he really falls off in 2017, 12th. 2018, 2019, they were 14th in They averaged 16. They went from averaging 30,000 fans in 2014 to 16,000 fans in 2019. Obviously, that has a lot more to do with than just Chris Davis, but the attendance shouldn't fall that much. If you have marquee names, if you have marquee guys like a Chris Davis who are still smashing 50 home runs a year, you don't end up 14th in attendance. You don't end up with 16,000 fans. I don't know. Francisco Lindor smashed 40 home runs, and Cleveland was pretty up and down with attendance, but who's to say? Let's leave it at this. You cannot stake the misfortunes of the Baltimore Orioles strictly to Chris Davis or his contract. Okay? However, I do think that in the long run, he will be blamed for, if not, the reason that they ended up where they are today. He certainly stunted the growth of this team. Just him just taking up that spot in the lineup is just, but like I said, you have to when he makes that much money. You almost have to, so that in the Baltimore Orioles' perfect situation, he comes back for, say, instead of 16 games, let's say he plays 45 or 50 games this year and does really well. They can get rid of him so that they can finally, for next season, not owe him this final $17 million, and they can really finally start trudging ahead towards that. Hopefully the next opportunity, the next window of opportunity for their organization. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Sorry for the technical difficulty there at the beginning. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of the Chris Davis contract talk. Not maybe as much there. It's because just there's not much that can be said once you look at his numbers. You look at his numbers and then you say, well, that explains it. I mean, it's just, there's not, although I'd love to give you more nuance, it's just right there. It's just the guy makes $17 million every year since 2016, and every year since 2016, he's gotten worse. And so have the Baltimore Orioles. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. You have a great weekend. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will catch you guys on the next one. All righty. We'll see you.